When my massage therapist asked me for the third time if I lived alone, I felt my stomach tighten. He smiled as he said it, but there was something in his eyes that made me uncomfortable. I told him yes, and he just nodded, like that answer meant something more than it should. Later that night, when I got home, I noticed my spare key was missing from the small pot near my door. My heart started racing. I ran inside, thinking maybe I dropped it somewhere, but when I went into my bedroom, I saw it, a folded note on my bed. It said, "I know what you did in," and then stopped. The sentence was unfinished. That's when I realized someone had been inside my house. Before I tell you what happened next, make sure to subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. What you're about to hear still haunts me every single night. My name is Hannah Rhodes, and I'm 29 years old. I work as a nurse at St. Michael's Hospital, doing long night shifts that leave me exhausted most days. About 6 months ago, I bought a small 2-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood outside Denver. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like mine, my safe place. My older sister, Melissa, lives half an hour away. She's a doctor, smart and protective, always checking on me to make sure I'm eating, sleeping, and locking my doors. She's been my anchor ever since our parents passed away. Because of my job, my back pain had been getting worse, so Melissa suggested I book a massage at a wellness center nearby. I thought it was a good idea, something simple to help me relax. That's how I met Eric Miller, the massage therapist. The first time I saw him, he seemed completely normal. He was polite, professional, and soft-spoken. The room smelled like lavender oil, and calm music played in the background. I felt at ease at first, but after the second session, he started asking questions that felt too personal. He'd say things like, "You must get tired working nights. Do you live close by?" Or, "It must get lonely in that big house." At first, I brushed it off as small talk, but his tone changed over time. It wasn't friendly anymore. It was curious in a way that made me uncomfortable. During my third visit, while he was working on my shoulders, he asked quietly, "Do you live alone?" I hesitated before answering. "Yeah, just me and my cat." He smiled, but it didn't feel kind. "You should be careful. Living alone isn't always safe." That comment stuck in my head. When I told Melissa later that night, she laughed it off and said, "He's probably just making conversation." I wanted to believe that, but I started noticing things that didn't feel right. He would remember small details about my life that I never told him, like what time I left for work or what street I lived on. One day, he mentioned how quiet my neighborhood was, and when I asked how he knew, he just said, "You can tell a lot about a person from how they talk." I tried to convince myself I was overthinking. Still, something about his calm voice and unblinking stare stayed with me. The last appointment I had with him before everything went wrong was on a Thursday afternoon. I remember walking into the room and feeling a strange chill. He seemed distracted that day, asking the same question again, if I lived alone. This time, I answered quickly and changed the subject. He didn't say much after that, just nodded and continued the session in silence. When I left, he held the door open for me and said, "It was nice seeing you again, Hannah. Take care of yourself. You never know who might be watching." I laughed awkwardly, thinking maybe he was joking, but his face stayed serious. On my way home, I kept thinking about his words. By the time I got to my house, it was dark outside. I went to check the little pot where I always kept my spare key, and that's when I realized it was gone. My hands started shaking as I unlocked the front door with my main key. The house was quiet. My cat didn't run up to me like she always did. I called her name, but there was no sound. I turned on the lights and saw everything looked normal. The couch, the kitchen, the mail on the counter. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misplaced the key myself. Then I walked into my bedroom. The blanket on my bed was wrinkled, like someone had sat there, and in the center was a folded piece of paper. My throat went dry as I opened it. In clean, neat handwriting, it said, "I know what you did in..." The sentence ended right there. No signature, no clue, just a cold, unfinished message that made my heart feel like it stopped beating. I remember backing out of the room slowly, afraid to breathe, because suddenly it hit me. Whoever had been there, whoever wrote that note, might still be inside my house. The second I saw that note, my heart felt like it stopped. I dropped it and backed away from the bed, my breath coming out uneven. I could feel every hair on my arms standing up. I looked toward the closet, half expecting someone to step out. My mind was racing. Had someone broken in while I was at work? Were they still here? I grabbed my phone and called out my cat's name, Luna! But there was no response. Usually she'd run straight to me, but that night, the house was silent. I forced myself to move from room to room, turning on every light. Everything looked normal. Nothing was missing. The front and back doors were still locked. The windows were closed. Yet someone had clearly been inside. The idea that a stranger had walked around my home, touched my things, and left that note made my skin crawl. I called my sister Melissa. She answered immediately. "What's wrong? You sound scared." I tried to keep my voice steady, but it shook anyway. "Someone's been in my house. My spare key is gone. There was a note on my bed. Call the police right now," she said. "Don't touch anything. I'm driving over." I wanted to wait for her, but something inside told me to check the security camera app on my phone. I had a small doorbell camera I'd bought a month earlier, but rarely looked at. When I opened the app, my stomach flipped. Around 5:47 p.m., right before I came home, the camera showed a man standing at my door. The angle only caught part of his face, but it was enough. It was Eric. He wasn't wearing his usual uniform or name tag. He was dressed in dark clothes and holding something shiny, my spare key. The clip ended with him looking straight into the camera before it cut off. I froze. My mind raced back to every strange question he'd asked, every look that felt a little too long, every quiet smile that made me uneasy. I realized then that I hadn't been paranoid. He had been studying me, watching me. The police arrived within 15 minutes. Officer Daniel Ross, a tall man with kind eyes, checked every room. "No signs of forced entry?" he said. "You're sure your spare key was here?" "Yes," I said. "I always keep it in the same spot." He nodded. "Do you know anyone who might have access to it?" I hesitated. Maybe my massage therapist. He knew I lived alone. He asked me about it more than once. Melissa arrived not long after, still in her scrubs, her face pale. She hugged me tight. "You're staying with me tonight. No arguments." The officer took the note, bagged it for evidence, and said they'd patrol the area. But when he left, I could see he was worried. He didn't say it out loud, but the look in his eyes told me he believed this wasn't over. That night at Melissa's, I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. The creak of the floor, the wind against the window. Around 2 a.m, I got another text from an unknown number. My phone buzzed on the nightstand and I picked it up with shaking hands. It said, "You shouldn't have called the cops." I dropped the phone, my chest tightening. I showed Melissa, and she immediately called Officer Ross. He told us to stay put and promised to trace the message. The next morning, the police found tire marks in the dirt near my back fence. Someone had parked behind my house. The prints matched an older black sedan seen on neighborhood cameras earlier that week. The license plate came back to a rental car under the name Eric Miller, but when the police went to the wellness center where I'd been getting massages, things got even stranger. The receptionist said no one named Eric worked there. She looked genuinely confused when I described him. "All of our therapists are women," she said. "We don't have any men on staff." I showed her the text messages he'd sent me to confirm my appointments. Her face turned white. "That's not our number," she whispered. It felt like my whole body went cold. Every appointment, every text, every visit, it was all fake. He had never worked. There. He must have found my information another way, maybe through a fake website or by calling the center pretending to be a new hire. He'd known my name, my job, my schedule, and even what neighborhood I lived in. When Officer Ross heard this, he looked at me with concern. "We're dealing with someone calculated," he said. "He's not random. He picked you." The realization hit me so hard I felt dizzy. He had chosen me, watched me, planned every step. I wasn't safe anywhere. That evening, I got another message. It read, "I left something for you in your room." My heart stopped. I hadn't been back home since the police searched it, but now I knew I had to. Melissa tried to stop me, but I needed to see what he meant. We went together with Officer Ross following behind. When we entered, everything looked normal at first. But then I saw something new on my nightstand, a small white envelope. Inside, it was a single photo. It was me, taken from outside my bedroom window while I was sleeping. On the back was another line written in the same neat handwriting as before. I told you, I know what you did in your house. At that moment, every ounce of safety I had ever felt in my home vanished. After the police collected the photo from my nightstand, I sat on the edge of my bed, feeling like the air had been sucked out of the room. Every corner of my house now felt like it was watching me. The shadows under the furniture, the narrow hallway, even the curtains swaying in the air conditioning, they all seemed alive. I couldn't stay there anymore. I went to Melissa's again that night, clutching Luna in her carrier. I barely said a word during the drive. The next morning, Officer Ross stopped by Melissa's house to update us. "We ran a check on the phone number that's been texting you," he said. "It's registered under a fake name, but it was purchased at a store near your neighborhood. We're reviewing the security footage." He paused, rubbing the back of his neck. "If he's still watching you, we'll find him." Melissa wasn't convinced. "You're not going back there, Hannah. Not until they arrest him." "I can't just leave everything I own there," I said. "And if he's been inside my house once, he could come again. I want to know what he's doing and why." She shook her head. "That's not your job." But that's exactly when something changed in me. I had spent days being terrified, waiting for someone else to protect me, someone else to solve it. But that fear was turning into something else, anger. I decided that if I wanted peace, I had to take control. That afternoon, I went to a local security store and bought 2 new cameras, one for my living room and another for the back door. The man behind the counter helped me set them up on my phone so I could monitor the feeds in real time. I also bought a small tracking device and hid it inside my car in case he tried to follow me. Again, when Officer Ross found out, he wasn't thrilled. "You need to be careful, Hannah. Don't try to confront him on your own." "I'm not looking for a fight," I said. "I just need to know what's going on." He nodded reluctantly. "If you notice anything suspicious, call us immediately. Promise me that." That night, I went back to my house with Melissa by my side. It felt strange walking through the door again, like entering a place that used to belong to someone else. The room smelled faintly of my vanilla candle, but underneath that was a hint of something metallic, almost like sweat. We went room by room, making sure everything was locked and checking for signs of tampering. Nothing looked disturbed. I reconnected the new security cameras and sat on the couch, staring at the feed on my phone. "If he comes back," I said quietly, "I'll see him before he sees me." Melissa put a hand on my shoulder. "You shouldn't have to live like this." "I know," I said, "but I'm done hiding." Later that night, as Melissa prepared to leave, she hugged me tightly. "Call me if anything happens. I mean it." After she left, I tried to keep myself busy, folding laundry, organizing drawers, anything to distract from the feeling that someone could be outside watching. I left the lights on in every room. Around midnight, Luna started growling near the front window. My phone buzzed with a notification from the new camera. Motion detected. Back door. I froze, staring at the screen. The live feed showed a shadow moving near the back fence. It wasn't clear, but I could see a figure crouching, trying to stay out of sight. I turned off the lights and grabbed the small flashlight I kept in the drawer. My hands shook so hard I could barely hold it. Instead of running, I made myself stay quiet. I moved to the back window and peeked out between the blinds. The yard was dark except for the faint light from the neighbor's porch. Then I saw it. Someone standing at the edge of the fence, wearing a hood. I called Officer Ross immediately. "He's here, behind my house. Stay inside," he said firmly. "We're 2 minutes away." I waited by the kitchen counter, heart racing, flashlight in one hand, phone in the other. I could hear faint rustling outside, like footsteps moving through the grass. Luna hissed and darted under the couch. Then there was a knock at the back door. Not loud, not rushed, slow and deliberate. Knock, pause, knock. I backed away, whispering to myself to stay calm. My phone screen lit up again. Camera disconnected. The feed went black. Moments later, red and blue lights flashed through the front window. 2 police cars pulled up, and I could finally breathe again. I opened the door as Officer Ross and another officer rushed in, heading straight for the backyard. They searched the area, flashlights sweeping over the grass and the fence line. When they came back, Ross said, "He's gone," but he was definitely here. We found footprints and fresh cigarette butts near the fence. "We'll send them for prints." I sat down, shaking from the adrenaline. Ross crouched beside me. "We're going to catch him, Hannah. He's escalating, but you did the right thing by calling us." As he spoke, my phone buzzed once more. A new message appeared on the screen. "You're braver than I thought." I showed it to Ross, and his jaw tightened. "He's watching you in real time. We're tracing this right now." In that moment, fear turned into resolve. I realized I wasn't the same person who had once tried to laugh off his strange questions or ignore her instincts. I was done being the victim. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to help catch him. That was the night I stopped being afraid of Eric, or Aaron, or whatever his real name was, and started fighting back. The night after the police found the footprints, I stayed with Melissa again. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the shadow at the fence, the knock on the back door, and the message that said, "You're braver than I thought." Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, his calm, empty stare from the massage room, and wondered how long he had been watching me before I ever noticed. By morning, Officer Ross called to tell me they'd traced the phone number. It was linked to a prepaid phone purchased 3 weeks earlier in a nearby town. The store's security footage showed a man wearing a baseball cap and glasses. Ross said he was working with detectives to identify him, but they were confident it was the same person who had been outside my house. "I know you're scared," Ross said gently, "but we're getting closer. Just keep your phone on you, and don't be alone if you can help it." Melissa wanted me to move in with her for a while, but I refused. I couldn't live the rest of my life afraid of my own home. I had already installed more cameras, reinforced the locks, and replaced my front door key. I wasn't running anymore. That evening, I went back to the wellness center with Ross. I needed answers. The receptionist looked nervous when she saw us. "You again," she said. "Did you find out who he was?" Ross showed her the photo from the store security camera. Her eyes widened. "That's him. He came in here a few months ago asking about job openings. We told him he needed a license. He said he'd come back later, but he never did. So he knew the layout of this place," Ross said. "He must have used your business name to contact clients." The woman nodded. "He must have stolen one of our online appointment forms. We've been having weird emails lately, but we thought it was spam." That confirmed it. He had found my information online, pretending to be from the same center. Everything, the texts, the calls, the sessions, was part of his plan. When we left, Ross told me the police were issuing a warrant for his arrest. "His real name is Aaron Miller," he said. "He has a record: stalking, breaking and entering, and harassment. He's done this before, but he's never gone this far." Hearing his real name made my skin crawl. Aaron, not Eric, the man I had trusted, the one who had touched my shoulders, my back, my neck. He wasn't even real. That night, I decided to stay home again. I didn't tell Melissa because she'd tried to stop me. I had one goal. If he came back, I wanted to catch him. I left my living room lights off but kept the cameras rolling. I sat on the couch with Luna curled in my lap, scrolling through my phone every few seconds to check the feeds. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the fridge. I was starting to drift off when I heard it. A soft scrape, like metal against metal. It was coming from the back door. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone and opened the camera app. The feed showed him, Aaron. He was crouched by the door, trying to pick the lock. His hood was pulled over his head, but I could see his face when he looked up at the camera. He smiled, slow and deliberate, like he knew I was watching. My hands shook as I called 911. "He's here," I whispered. "He's breaking into my house." The operator told me to stay quiet and find a safe spot to hide. I locked myself in the bathroom and kept the phone pressed to my ear. I could hear the faint creak of the back door opening, then footsteps on the hardwood floor. Luna hissed from under the sink. My heart pounded so loud I thought he might hear it. I crouched low and whispered, "Please hurry." The footsteps got closer, slow and steady, then silence. I held my breath. Suddenly, something tapped on the bathroom door. 1, 2, 3 knocks. His voice came next, calm and almost kind. "Hannah," he said, "you shouldn't have called the police. You made this harder than it had to be." Tears burned my eyes. "Leave me alone," I shouted. He laughed quietly. "You didn't have to be afraid. I just wanted you to tell me the truth." "What truth?" I cried. There was a pause. Then he said, "What you did in your house. I know you lied about it." I had no idea what he meant, and I didn't care. I just wanted him gone. I could hear sirens faintly in the distance, getting closer. Aaron must have heard them too, because his tone changed. It went from calm to panicked. "You think they can protect you?" he yelled. "You think they can stop me?" Something slammed against the door, and I screamed. The lock held, but the sound made my entire body shake. He hit it again, harder this time. I braced myself, praying the police would reach me before he did. Then the front door burst open. "Police! Hands up!" I heard Officer Ross shout. Everything happened fast after that. Footsteps rushed through the hallway, a struggle, shouting, and then silence. When the officers opened the bathroom door, I was crying and shaking, unable to move. Ross helped me to my feet. "It's over," he said softly. "We got him." They led Aaron out in handcuffs. He looked at me as he passed, his expression calm again, almost peaceful. "You'll remember me," he said quietly. "You always will." The police searched his car that night. Inside, they found photos of me, screenshots from my social media, and a small bag containing my old spare key. They also found a list of other women's names. Mine was the only one not crossed out. Standing in my driveway under the flashing lights, I felt every emotion hit at once. Fear, anger, relief. It was over, but I knew the echo of what happened would never leave me. I looked down at Luna in her carrier, her green eyes wide and alert. "We're safe now," I whispered, even though part of me wasn't sure if that was true. When Officer Ross returned later to check on me, he said, "You did everything right, Hannah. You stayed alert, trusted your instincts, and called for help. That's why you're still here." For the first time in weeks, I believed him. That night, when I finally locked my new door and turned off the lights, I promised myself one thing. I would never let fear silence me again. It took months before I could walk into my house without checking every corner first. Even after the locks were changed, the cameras replaced, and the alarms installed, the feeling of being watched never really left me. For a long time, I jumped at every noise, the creak of the floorboards, the sound of the wind against the window, even my cat's quiet footsteps. Safety had turned into a habit of survival. Aaron Miller was arrested that night and charged with multiple counts of stalking, breaking and entering, and attempted assault. The police later discovered he had targeted other women in nearby towns using the same fake massage therapist setup. But in every case, he stopped short before getting caught. Until me. He had built a twisted routine of obsession and control, always vanishing before anyone could prove anything. That time, he slipped up because he wanted me to know he was there. He wanted me to see him. When the trial started, I was terrified to face him again. My hands shook as I took the stand. He sat just a few feet away, wearing a calm expression like none of it mattered. When the prosecutor showed the photos he'd taken of me in my own home, I felt sick. It was one thing to know it happened. It was another to see proof of it with my own eyes. He never looked away from me once. When I was done testifying, I felt like I could finally breathe again. I left the courtroom and sat outside on a bench, crying quietly until Melissa came and wrapped her arm around me. "You're stronger than you think," she whispered. Maybe she was right. I had spent so long living in fear that I hadn't noticed the strength it took just to keep moving forward. After the sentencing, I tried to rebuild. I took some time off from the hospital and started volunteering at a local shelter for women who had survived stalking and abuse. Talking to them made me realize something important. We all carried the same invisible scars, the constant anxiety, the mistrust of strangers, the guilt that somehow it was our fault for letting it happen. But it wasn't. It never was. I moved into a new place a few months later, an apartment in a busier neighborhood where I didn't feel so isolated. It had neighbors close by, better lighting, and security at the entrance. My sister helped me decorate it, filling it with plants and warm colors to make it feel like home. Luna took a few days to adjust, but soon she was back to curling up in my lap while I read or watched TV. One night, about 6 months after the incident, I was sitting on my couch scrolling through the news when I saw Aaron's name again. The article said he'd been sentenced to 25 years in prison with no chance of parole. Seeing those words brought me a kind of relief I didn't expect. For the first time in a long while, I could breathe without the weight of fear pressing on my chest. Still, the nights were the hardest. I'd wake up sometimes thinking I heard footsteps or a door creak. I'd check the cameras, even when I knew everything was fine. I realized that trauma doesn't vanish when the danger is gone. It lingers in your mind, waiting for quiet moments to remind you what it felt like. But I also learned that healing is possible. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small, steady steps. The first time I slept through the night without waking up to check the locks, I felt proud. The first time I laughed without feeling guilty for being happy again, I cried afterward, but this time out of relief. A year after it all began, I started telling my story online. At first, it was just to process what happened, to feel like I had control of the narrative again. But then the messages started coming in. Women from all over the country wrote to say they'd been through similar things, that my story helped them trust their instincts, that it gave them courage to speak up. That's when I realized something powerful. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can become the reason someone else finds their voice. I still think about that night sometimes. The knock on the door, the sound of his voice, the unfinished note on my bed. But now, when I think about it, I don't feel helpless. I feel thankful because I survived, because I fought back, because I didn't let fear win. And maybe that's the hardest but most important lesson of all. Fear can live inside you, but it doesn't have to define you. Before I go, I want to remind anyone watching, always trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't ignore that feeling. Protect yourself, speak up, and don't ever think you're overreacting. You could save your own life by listening to that voice inside. If my story reached you tonight, take a moment to subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps me keep sharing these real stories that remind us all how strong we can be, even in the darkest moments. And if you ever find yourself afraid, remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to keep living your life despite it.